All right, we're live. No, you cannot start, Craig. Today, it's me starting out this conversation. And what we're going to talk about today is advice that you would have given yourself, dental school or as a baby dentist. Okay. And the spirit. So get your start writing things down.
I'm writing.
So the spirit of this was born from, I did a virtual lecture to state dental graduates, third and fourth year people.
When was this?
It was virtual. This was like right before our summit.
And I had no idea.
Yeah, well,
it makes me happy that you're so relevant.
I don't peacock everything like you do.
Well, I mean, listen, when you speak in front of 2,000 people, it's not peacocking. It just sounds different from I did a virtual webinar to Ohio State students.
This is true. You definitely have more of the stage presence.
No, go ahead.
So I thought long and hard, right? Because I was like, what? So immediately in my head, when I go to kind of thinking about dentists and training, it's the bulletproof pathway and things like, advanced marketing techniques and this kind of culture. But like those things, Craig, aren't really relevant for someone in dental school, right? You just don't have enough context. You haven't had enough swings at the plate yet to say like, oh, okay, you're just not ready for that. And I remember, back in the day, I had some mentors. Actually, we met him, mentors online, even back in 2001, 2002. And they gave me some advice. Samir, you met Samir?
Samir Fury.
Yeah. He actually used to be, he and I were friends. And just the first time we met was, a month ago. We were friends on Dental Town. And he would give
I didn't know that you never met him until
I never had met him, dude.
Wow. Weren't you surprised how tall he is, by the way? He's like our height.
I was shocked by that. So another guy was a guy out South Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina. And I'll never forget, Craig, this is how impactful like your words can be, right? So imagine writing 2 sentences that someone remembers 20 years later, right? And so I reached out to a guy named Dr. Tom Trinkner, who's just an OG. You know him, right?
I only know his name. I don't know. I've never met him.
He's just a boss. He looks like a model, great looking guy, just super compassionate dude, like was amazing at cosmetics. I think he's still in practice. I don't know. I haven't kept up. Anyway, I reached out to him because I followed him and I was a big fan of his work on Dental Town. And I'm just the measly little, third year dental student or fourth year dental student. And I was like, hey, any advice for someone like me as they embark on their career? And I was ready for go do Spear, go do this. And I don't know, Spear was back then, but it was like, I was waiting for all this clinical stuff. And what he wrote back to me was basically like, hey, take time to care for yourself, get massages, work out, take mental health things, right? And I wish I still had that email, but it was basically like in the concept of put the oxygen mask on first. And I thought this was so great, honestly, Craig, because for today's topic, and I'm going to pull up a graphic I have of this that I used for Ohio State. But as we, if you went to the summit, that we had Uchi Odiatu speak at our summit, and he was the MC, and he brought just amazing energy. And I know he goes around the nation and pretty much lectures almost every weekend about basically health for dentists, whatever that means, right? Spiritual or flexibility or, all sorts of crazy things. And you and I love Uchi so much that we are going to bring him on to do a once a month series called Bulletproof Body or Bulletproof Health rather. So because I feel like dentists just abuse the shit out of their body, Craig, for 25 years, and they look back and they're like, oh man, I'm worn out, I'm tired, like I kind of did. You stay in these contorted positions for 8 hours a day. You stay super stressed. You never really get a good night's sleep because you're worried about the hygienist leaving you or this, it's really just this entrepreneurial journey where you never get rest. So your cortisol levels just remain maxed out and your fitness takes a hit and you're eating on the go. Right. And so this is why I think it's so important that I love that we're bringing in Uchi as someone who can teach our audience about taking care of themselves. Okay.
And he's got the breadth of experience and
100%.
I mean, he's authored several publications. He's been cited like 100 times. He's really, it's almost unfortunate. And I say this lovingly, it's almost unfortunate he's a dentist because I think it pigeonholes what people think about him. It'd be better. He'd be like a personal trainer. He is certified, by the way, as a personal trainer as well, but
Well, I
wellness
mean,
coach.
even just what he did at the summit, right? Like sitting
Amazing.
down and getting lymphatic flow and having people stand up and changing their energy and getting them in a place to receive knowledge. And it was just really cool. And me as being like a quasi biohacker, I don't know if I'm a biohacker so much anymore,
You
but
are.
I'm definitely interested in all things medical and optimizing. And so for me, I really, Craig, personally cannot wait for these series with him. We're only going to do one a month, but we're going to do a 12-part series, and he's already kind of created the syllabus of, and I'm really excited to kind of jump in, you know, from a selfish reason as well. Just even talking into the summit, like there were little tips and tricks, you know, the blue light glasses and the EMF pad and like little simple things and like the water you drink, like just simple techniques that we can preserve
talent, Peter.
Longevity.
And selfishly speaking, I'm happy you're saying that, because selfishly speaking, like we just want more of him in our lives.
Yeah.
And I even said to him, because he's thinking about leaving Canada, I'm like, I would pay for you to leave and be my neighbor. I would pay for you to be my neighbor.
Be your personal, your health.
Well, no, just as he's a friend, but I don't see him very often. But yeah, we're gonna, you know, later on, we're gonna try to figure out a way to do wellness retreats with him. And selfishly speaking, we just figured,
hey, through Bulletproof, right?
Through Bulletproof. If there's a way that you and I could attend,
100%, I'll be there.
I would,
100% as an attendee.
As an attendee, yeah, exactly.
So hopefully we can get that going towards the beginning of the year, and you know, kind of do a BP health. You know, keep it small and intimate, maybe 20, 25 people, and really just go to like a retreat. Like I have, like Greg, I told you, my buddy in YPO, he owns that Savannah out in Scottsdale.
Yeah.
And it's like just world renowned wellness retreat center. So anyway, without further ado, let me pull this up.
Okay. By the way, just a little bit of housekeeping. I know we're talking kind of openly, but Erica's got a call with Uchi. She wants you to join as well. So for this planning,
you realize we're recording a live podcast I feel like right now,
talking because yeah, I know.
Oh my God, such a rookie. All right, here we
go. No, I mean, it's true. We're excited and passionate about putting together this plan, even just because we want to be a part of it. If we look back to the origin of the mastermind, it was you and me in Turks and Caicos with our families saying, wouldn't it be cool if we could bring this to the community? So everything we do starts from ourselves.
I was telling Vanessa
would like to be actually. I would like to be a paying attendee of an Uchi wellness event. So it's selfish. Like if we want to do it, I'm sure there's other people that want to do it.
So it's an interesting, right? The thesis, I was telling her like the thesis or the impetus or the genesis, I should say, of the mastermind to begin with. And it was you and I sitting at the Short Club in Turks and Caicos with our family, you and I drinking a
lemon water.
Ain't gonna lie. The beer ain't gonna lie.
Oh yeah. We fell asleep and my wife was taking pictures of us.
Yes. And I was like, man, and we were sitting around, of course, talking about dentistry. And I was like, man, wouldn't this be great if like we just had a bunch more people here talking and collaborating and masterminding about dentistry, and we could go to these cool locations. And so that is the spirit of the mastermind. And so we're going to a sweet resort in October.
That's us back there.
That is us. A good way to pull up your imagery very quickly. Gosh, we were much better looking many years ago.
I think you're doing pretty good. All that biohacking is paying off for you.
But anyway, you know, we've got a cool place in Mexico we're going to, and then of course we do our ski. So it's we've got 2 trips for this next, you know, the 2024-2025 mastermind, which I believe we still have a few spots. So if you're interested, obviously go to that. But Craig, if you look on your screen now without further ado, we've covered your housekeeping, and we've kind of given some context. And so here was the last slide on my presentation to Ohio State. And I was like, you know, this would be a good thing to talk about, Craig, and not to give you a heads up on what I put, I would really want you to kind of elaborate on what I have here. Okay. So the first thing was my message to them in closing was take care of yourself. Very much so like Tom Trinkner said to me. Okay. And it was a lot of people. And I basically said, look, a lot of people and a lot of people's are going to depend on you, right? The people you employ, your family, and then those families of the people you employ will be very dependent on the decisions you make and the health that you maintain. Okay. And that is,
I love that distinction, by the way, not to interrupt you, but you'll do more for other people than you do for yourselves. So when you describe business ownership as not just for you and not just for your employees, but for the families and spouses and friends of your employees, it makes the circle larger and it makes it more important for you to understand about the oxygen mask. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
totally.
not that you put the oxygen mask on you first because you matter more. It's just your survival, the survival of other people is predicated on your survival.
Right. Right. Yeah, the business is usually predicated on you, right? If you're not there.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have here like massage. And for so many years, Craig, that I always think that was a luxury. People would make fun. Oh, it must be nice to get a massage. But I think in dentistry, especially given the ideas of the ergonomics and we get contorted positions and our muscles get all these fixations, that I think it's really important to get regular body care like this, right? Your fascia, your things, lymphatics, all that stuff, especially given that we are dealing with a lot of, lymphatics clear a lot of these chemicals from your body. It's really important. The second thing is we hear, how many of your friends, Craig, that have stopped dentistry because of back pain?
Yeah, tons.
Yeah. And that back pain is because of poor core fitness, right? It's not because of back pain.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
It's a symptom of it's a symptom.
So even if you don't have time to work out, I think if you as a dentist can focus on your core, right? Simple 5-minute exercises a day just to counteract the effects of dentistry. I think that's a great place to start. The third recommendation I have with them is when you can afford it, students, and you can get a concierge doctor, do that. Do that, because regular medicine, as we know, does not have the bandwidth of time to treat you as a complicated individual. Your bloods and your panels and your nutrition and your counseling and your biohacking, whatever it is, right? So you need to pay for attention from your physician, and when you can afford it. And granted, I mean, do you have a concierge physician, Craig?
Yeah, I do. I go to the Cleveland Clinic, but I think more another layer to the time is general medicine is focused on getting you unsick.
Yeah.
So if you're not yet sick, general medicine wants nothing to do with you. So what you're talking about, everything you're talking about here is prevention. Core fitness will prevent, testing will prevent, good ergonomics massage will prevent. So the medical system does not know what to do with you when you're pre-injured or pre-sick.
Yeah, right. And so nor does it have a code for that, right? Meaning so.
And I've witnessed that firsthand. I remember going to a cardiologist before I ran my first half marathon, and he's just like, "What are you doing here?" I was like, "Well, I just want to make sure I'm okay, Well, look, I got a waiting room full of people that are post heart attack. I'm like, what about pre-heart attack? So I just think and that's why dentistry works so well in that we get people optimally well. People come in for cleanings. They're coming in for prevention. People do not go to the medical professional for preventive information because the medical professional typically, I mean, how many doctors that are unhealthier than you are?
100%. Yeah, you go to your cardiologist, like you said, and he's smoking and fat potentially, right? Yep. But he's in your plan.
Right. Exactly.
So really, I'm a big fan of this because I've been both sides of this, right? I've been through the person who was in my network and the person who I've kind of paid for their attention in this. And I think it's a good use of funds for sure. And it's not like we're talking, I mean, what do you pay a year? I pay like $3,000 a year.
No, I'm less. I think my Cleveland Clinic executive physical is like $1,800 plus my insurance.
Okay. So, but, so you have a physician that you can text and things like that. And like, hey, dog.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Good.
And then funny enough, you're talking about injury. We had to move this podcast an hour earlier because I'm dealing with a neck injury.
No way.
I had an original neck injury. I herniated C5, C6, I think, in a snowboarding accident. I think is when I did it. It's, the last couple of years.
How's that possible? You go so slow on a snowboard.
Well, now I do now that I'm 52, bro. It's like saying your dad drives slow. Yeah, he does. He's 80. So anyway, now I'm going for, the last couple of years of my clinical practice, my hands would go numb. My pinky and my finger would go numb when I was working.
Yeah.
Of course, I paid my disability in my entire career, and then I stopped clinical practice and canceled my disability. So,
well, did I ever tell you the story? That same thing happened to me with my hand. You've seen that bump on my hand I'm showing?
Yeah, I know it.
Right? Like that thing caused me numbness. I would have to take my glove off and shake my hand. And it literally, I could not do dentistry without pain. And to your point, I reached out to my malpractice or my disability. And I was like, hey, this is an issue. Went and had all these MRIs and they basically, at the end, they denied the claim. And I was like, awesome. So I paid this for 20 years and I have a legit pain and now I can't get it. So scam.
Sucks.
All right. So next thing on the list is testing. And so, as you know, Craig, I'm a big fan of testing, not only through your concierge doctor, right, through doing copious amounts of labs. I do labs every quarter, right? And I'm looking at the Boston Heart Panel, right? So not just looking at cholesterol, looking at, LP little a, looking at, there's so many things that you can look at, and why I'm drawing a blank right now, but LP little a is probably the one thing that is the widowmaker, right? Yep. But so good cardiac testing.
Calcium coronary score.
Yeah, there you go.
It's crazy. Like a case in point, I went to my in-network doctors, a friend of mine. I said, and I don't want this to come off callous or cavalier, but I said, money's not an object. What are the tests I can take that could, give me better intel into my health? And I mean, obviously, if he said there's something for $100,000, I would have said no. But he said, there's nothing. There's nothing you can do. When I went to Cleveland Clinic, they said we need a coronary calcium score. I said, how much is that? It was like $350 with my copay. So like for $350, some of us have dinner for that amount. This is a test that could affect. It just shows the disconnect of what medicine's like, and you have to take it into your own hands. You have to be the champion for your own health. No one's going to no one's going to ever help you the way you should.
Let me list some other testing they've done just to give people some cool ideas. Craig, years ago, I had a scare in the hospital. I was in the hospital. They thought I had stomach cancer. Then they told me I had Crohn's. And this is many years ago. This is 2006. It was a very scary time in my life. I think I maybe alluded to that. And that's what caught me on my journey to kind of this biohacking and really digging in to figure out what's going on, because that kind of rattles you. And so I went out on the West Coast to Peter Diamandis's thing called, it was Human Longevity at the time, or Health Nucleus it was at the time.
Yeah, Health Nucleus. I remember this.
And, I basically was like, look, I saved up all this money. It was a $20,000 physical, but it was basically, I was like, I got to find answers, because I was becoming obsessed with thinking that I was broken physically, right? My insides were just broken, my gut, all these things. So I was like, you know what? I'm not getting the answers from just this healthcare I'm getting. So I flew out there for this in-depth physical, essentially where they mapped my genome. It was a full day with me with 7 doctors, right? I was the only patient. So it was all the things. And it was great because it brought me peace of mind, because in the end, it was like, hey, there's nothing wrong with your stomach, right? But one thing you might want to look at is your heart or your cardiovascular things, because we're seeing some blah, blah, blah. And had I not, right, literally, Craig, they gave me pills for Crohn's disease. They said, take these the rest of your life. And I didn't have it. So there was a misdiagnosis on my medical report. My insurance dropped me because they saw the word terminal ileitis, right? Inflammation at the terminal ileum of my intestines. So it was just a disaster of a time, but it put me on this journey. So all this to say is that once upon a time, I was like, man, cancer, really? And so I take these tests every year. They're called the GRAIL test. I think you know about them.
No, I don't know. The what test?
It's called the GRAIL test. And so now science is allowing us, right, through looking at microscopic blood work, and some people say, oh, it's not sound science yet or whatnot, but it's about $1,000 test, and it can look for microscopic cancers or microscopic signals of cancers. And so I do this once a year just because, right, I have this PTSD from being in the emergency room, someone saying, hey, we think you have stomach cancer, kind of thing. You just can't unhear that. So I do that. Another simple test I've been looking at recently is MTHFR, right? Do you ever heard of that enzyme?
No.
So it's very common. 40% have this gene defect, quote unquote defect, and it affects the way you methylate stuff. So
methylation. It's the, what's that guy's name? I took the test. I never looked at the Gary Brecka. I never looked at it.
Yeah, I did.
So
I did that test.
I did the test. I haven't even opened it.
So methylation is a huge thing because it's involved in almost every human process you have, right? And so
I'm sorry to cut you. You're gonna fucking want to kill me for this. This is the first shirtless photo of Peter and Craig, Turks and Caicos 2000.
Both passed out.
Both passed out. 2 ain't gonna lie beers, Farmer Tan cooking full. Everybody's got Farmer Tan.
It looks like 2 dentists on a chair.
A different color than our bodies, but that was it. So sorry, go ahead. Methylation.
All right. Well, I'll get off of testing because I could go down a weird rabbit hole of all this stuff, and right. But I also think one other thing is have your physician test you for heavy metals too. And I think that that's a big thing for dentists, especially because of the compounds we deal with, right? Obviously, we know in my career, Craig, I took out a tremendous amount of amalgam fillings,
Oh man, me too. Tons.
right? And I didn't use probably the proper, the snuffleupagus things.
Oh, come on, man.
What?
What's like this? You just got to go with it. You just use water
I
spray and
understand, but
HVE, and
guess what? Okay,
you
I'm just
scrape the
saying,
amalgam off your glasses when you're done.
pretty much, right? And so
Remember
as
the
we
gloves,
know,
the mercury in your gloves, flick them off.
yeah, but as
Flush
we
it.
know, the most harmful part of mercury is the part of putting it in the amalgam and the part of taking it out, because you're
course.
vaporizing that stuff. And then
Yeah.
you're inhaling it and it crosses your blood-brain
100%
barrier.
taking it out is worse than putting it in.
Right. And so
But I was a kid playing in my dad's dental office with the mercury, like running it back and forth on paper. He had a
That's what's
mercury
wrong with you.
dropper.
Hey, do you know, by the way, do you know why in Alice in Wonderland the Mad Hatter was crazy?
Yeah, mercury from the dye in his hats.
Yes, you're the
Yeah.
only person that I've ever known that knew
I
that.
am like the king of useless knowledge. You should know that, Pete.
Dude, so like honestly, if there's a correlation to like mental health and dentistry or whatever you're going to do, like could there be some correlation to the mercury exposure?
Well, I mean, that would be helpful.
Right, but no one's going to go there.
Yeah, it's actually called.
As a matter of fact, I just got a cease and
disease.
desist as we're talking from the ADA. So,
Oh, well, I'm sure they don't. After the way we demolished them in the podcast, I don't think they listen to us anymore. It's called Mad Hatter disease, erytheism.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then there you go.
Yeah.
All right. So the next thing on the list is good ergonomics. Won't spend long on this, but obviously, right, Craig, I was not a student of this, and I stayed in like oddly contorted positions for long procedures, 5 hours at a time, just banging up your body and being like, I can do it. I can do anything. And like, I just didn't, I didn't adjust the patient or the chair or
look
all
at
this
those
stuff.
down loops now. All my hygienists using those down loops that are 45-degree angle down. It's amazing. They're literally standing perfectly erect, looking out the window.
Idea. You know, we have those. I bought those on Alibaba for patients to watch TV in the chair.
Yeah. But their posture is crazy. They're fully
so like the prism glasses kind of thing, right?
They're looking straight out, neck neutral, looking straight out the window, and they're working on patients like this.
That's great. That's great. So look, maybe that's becoming more and more thing, but like, and, you know, Uchi can elaborate on all this when we start getting into the syllabus of his 12 things he sent us, which is going to be great. And then mental fitness, Craig. I think it's wise to, especially now, like there are online I mean, I'm not saying a therapist or everyone should have a therapist, but there's really some great resources for people to talk to people when they need to online, or apps, or a group like a Bulletproof, right? I think a mastermind is so much, you do so much therapeutic work for people in the mastermind, right? Getting them off the edge of being lonely and feeling worthless and getting them driven and passion, full of passion. But like, I think there is something to be said about your mental fitness, right? Your neuroplasticity, your mental health, your mental fitness. And I think that's a continual thing, just like going to the gym.
Yeah, let me just add one thing, Pete. I'm going to jump in for you have bullet points for those that are not listening, or those that are not watching, but they're listening. So you have the take care of yourself bucket, you have the educational, you have the non-dental, dental, leadership, and then the bottom, you have the learn about yourself, know thyself, don't focus on your weakness. I'm going to add your mental fitness. I'm going to add the bottom into the mental fitness, because I think we do a very poor job as dentists understanding what drives us. And I think that's also part of the mastermind, the unwinding process of what the profession told you should be doing. And a lot of people are just kind of hijacking other people's visions for what they should do in their practices, and they wind up really unhappy. So dentists, we're holistically, obviously, we're not able to retire on time. We're not pursuing a profession that a modality of profession that we really thought much about. We just went to some course, and next thing we know, we started on this business plan to create something that we're not actually wanting to create. So I think there's a lot of breakdown in dentistry because people were not intentional with what they wanted to design. I think there's a lot of people that are listening to this podcast that might be on their second, third, and fourth practice, and they're like, what the hell am I doing? I'm driving around everywhere across town to work in different offices, and I'm miserable. I think that's a commonality. I don't know if it's just my own selection bias, because when people are upset, they email me and not you, I guess. But you see the emails I get, I forward them to you. So it's always like, I'm unhappy. I'm not where I wanted to
Well,
be.
you get them because you have a very, I really think you have some clairvoyance on kind of what people want or what they're saying. And like you're looking at their body language and what they say and what they really intend. And I think you give good sound advice to people to
But I
just
think
kind of
thank you for that. But I think it comes from not being clear in the beginning.
totally.
So I have a buddy of mine who said, I need help this morning. He started this business with a friend. And I remember telling him like early on a year ago, so what's your vision? What are you going to do with it? How are you going to make money? How is this going to happen? And he couldn't answer any of these questions. So I'm like, oh, there's 4 partners in this thing. I don't know how it's going to, and then sure enough, today it was like, we have to have a breakup. I'm like, well, let's be honest here. Like when I asked you a year ago, what do you want to get out of this? You couldn't explain it. So people have a lack of understanding about what they want to create, which leads to misery in your profession. So go ahead.
Well said. Well said. So, okay, we'll put that down into the last bucket. Okay, so now we'll jump into the second bucket, which is my advice, right? This is still just advice too. And, I'm a big fan. So I said, look, there's education you should get beyond dental school. Yes, there's dental education you should get beyond dental school. But there's also, more importantly, almost, is some non-dental education. Especially if you're not gifted in some of these things, right? So like we all know the story of where I told one of the associates I had, he's like, what course should I take? And I was like, public speaking, go to Toastmasters. And he was so offended by that. I think every dentist should kind of look and be good at that book Persuasion, or in some psychology, some basic psychology, so that they know how to direct conversations. They know how to read. They know how to read people. They know how to interpret people. They know how to communicate a little bit better, right? And that's the next one is effective communication, right? Learning body language and being able to know when people are nervous or scared, or know when someone's uncomfortable, or know when they're worried about their finances. But being able to effectively communicate, I think, is an art, not one I've mastered by any means. But I've been a student my whole life.
And and I just want to add one thing for the students or the newbies that are listening to this podcast. You could be a great dentist, have the most beautiful, incredible hand skills, have the amazing technical abilities that you dream to possess, but you'll go nowhere if you don't master this. Because unfortunately, the patients can't understand what you're going to do for them. So if you're not a master of communication and you have great hands, no one can surmount that for you. So you have to be a masterful communicator, a masterful persuader, in order to be at a high level of dentistry. And it's unfortunate. I wish that wasn't the case.
Totally. But it is what it is. And at the end of the day, like, Greg, there's a difference in the way we communicate to fellow colleagues, and there's a difference in the way you communicate to patients. Moreover, there's also a different way you would communicate to someone like my mother versus someone that you would talk to, my wife, right? Or my father, right? There's different communication styles. And I used to gamify this and be like, and so my team would be like, hey, so I have a new patient in the room. He's an engineer, right? And he has X, Y, and Z wrong. And so I would instantly kind of put my psychology hat on and be like, okay, an engineer is going to want me to speak in bullet points and to the facts and very problem consequence kind of thing. And so I would curate the way that I address the treatment plan based on engineering psychology. Okay. I would do the same thing with someone who was going into, hey, this patient has a wedding in July, right? Right. I would speak to what their trigger was, what they came for. It was to, I want to be proud in my wedding photos kind of thing. So I would speak to that kind of thing. And this isn't manipulation or psychology. It's just giving people what they want, right? You don't go into a clothing store, Craig, and say, hey, I'm here for a new jacket, right? You go to Brooks Brothers, let's just say, I'm here for a new jacket. And they're like, okay, cool. But have you seen these shoes over here? Like, let's get you shoes first, right? Like, stay with what people are seeking, and then you can attach that later.
Well, even simple as someone does come in saying, I want a new jacket. Okay, what type of event are you going to? My best friend's getting married and I'm the speech. Okay, well, great. So, what's it's going to be, they say it's Cuban, like Havana chic. Okay, great. Well, asking the right questions. I always remember there was a consultant way back in the day that I had in my office. This was like 100 years ago, but he was great. He talked about this story about a person calling a limousine company. And imagine calling a limousine company and saying, hey, how much is a limousine to go from Buckhead to downtown Atlanta? Guy tells you $110. Great, I'll call you back. You call the next limousine company. How much is limousine to go from Buckhead to downtown Atlanta? Well, what are you doing? Well, it's Emily's birthday, my wife's birthday. Okay, cool. Would it be helpful for us to, bring the limousine with a bottle of chilled Veuve Clicquot and 2 iced down glasses? Yeah, that'd be great.
Oh
And
yeah,
how about
that'd
a
be
little
great.
note? How about a little note saying, love you, Emily. Happy birthday, love Peter, or
Mm-hmm.
blow to a rose or whatever. And then by the time you're asking all these questions,
Yeah, like
you
what
get
was
to
your
the point
wedding
where,
song? Let's play
yeah,
that.
well,
Like
yeah,
shit like that.
well, just a small example of whoever asks the question controls the outcome. So when patients come in, this harkens back to the Chris Ramsey conversation that we had that turned into that fight in the podcast. And for those who haven't seen that, you can go back on YouTube, and Chris is great, but we had like a full-on argument. Chris doesn't believe that you should ask patients if they love their smile. He actually
Oh yeah, I remember
compared
that.
it to like if you went to your bartender and they gave you comments about your shirt, you'd be pissed. I'm like, yes, but I'm not their bartender. If I'm your bartender, I'll ask you how you like your drink. They're coming to us and they don't know what's possible. So it's incumbent upon us as the provider to say, do you love your smile? And if they do, fantastic, move on. Even if their smile's terrible, if they like it, they need no dentistry. But if they don't love their smile, ask them why. And they say, well, I have these crowns in the front, they have black margins and these black lines, but I know that you have to use metal in crowns. People don't know. So, get to understand what your patients really want and don't focus on the actual thing. It's not the new jacket. It's what are you celebrating? Why a new jacket today? Why are you here today? What changed? Anything changed in your life? Yes, I have a reunion coming up, or my daughter's getting married. So I don't know. I didn't mean to go on a
No, I
little
love that. I think this is all pertinent,
but
right?
that's
This
not
is
just public speaking and persuasion. That's you're helping your patient if you know what your patient wants and what drives them.
yeah, and being able to curate your conversation is kind of where we're both saying.
And one last thing, Pete, and then I'll let you talk. When my doctors come to me and they say, hey, I need your help with a case presentation or treatment plan, I'll look at this elaborate thing they're talking about. I'm like, what are you going to do? Well, I want to do upper 10 units of veneers and lower this. I'm going to do that. I'm like, okay, what's most important to the patient? What was their chief complaint? And they'll look at me kind of blank and say, well, I don't know. I was like, well, then what are you doing? Like, it's like they didn't ask for anything. And so what you're doing is you're doing what you'd want if you were them. So you have to figure out what drives them. So before you have any of this, and I've actually had doctors go in and say, hey, Mr. Jones, I want an opportunity to talk to you again. Well, we met last time. You hadn't been to the dentist in 5 years. What's the reason why you came here? Why have you been gone for 7 years? Was it money? Was it fear? What was the reason why you haven't gone to the dentist in 7 years? Well, actually, it was money. Well, what changed? Well, my aunt died and left me $1 million to fix my teeth. Well, you won't need that, or fear, or what bothers you. And these types of questions are not just public speaking. They're just the art of providing patients with what they need. And if you can go back in on your patients and start those conversations again, when I got a little bit ahead, I saw these things that I wanted to do. And like what Deborah Nass said to you, can I tell you everything I want to do in your mouth? Or that wasn't what she said. What did she have?
Do I have permission to talk to you about what I would want to see for you? Right? Like,
yeah. I like what I said too. Do I have permission to tell you everything I'd like to complete? And well, whatever. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I was like, God, Craig, if I had implemented that one line, right,
you would have made millions of dollars more.
In your career enrollment,
right? I went enough on the tirade, but
no, dude, this is so good. Like, look, this is good stuff. I'm sitting there listening to you, and I've heard you talk millions of words in my life. I'm still listening. I'm clinging to the words you're saying, because I think this is such good information, and we know, like, Craig, I really actually want to do a pod that's like confidence in, like, how to be more confident in your patient presentation, right? How to be more. Because I think dentists, and we see this all the time, and I've done this and been guilty, I'm sure you have probably too, is that when you get nervous or flustered or whatever, maybe as a baby dentist, that your immediate knee-jerk reaction is to get super technical and look down or look at the screen, right? Or point to the x-ray right? But it's avoiding eye contact, and it's getting super technical and trying to flex on the fact that like I deserve to be here kind of thing. Like I'm a dentist. I deserve to do this treatment on you kind of thing, right?
You
You're
know why that
flexing.
happens, though, Pete? Because I think most dentists think of case presentation as like a monologue, a performative thing, a monologue. Let me go in and let me show all this stuff. Like that just means you haven't figured out what the patient wants. So if you can get the patient to tell you what they want, I've got a high school reunion coming up and I'm afraid to smile. If you can get that information, then it's not a case presentation.
Yeah, it's almost like, yeah, you're right. That almost is inaccurate vernacular or or nomenclature.
But they do
like
that.
presentation.
They get nervous.
You're not presenting. It's case dialogue or case conversation, right? It's not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Very
But
good.
that requires you to learn what the patient wants. And that's the art. So if you can distill down what's most important to you, why have you been gone so long? Why did you choose to come in? Well, I'm afraid, and well, great. I'm so thankful that you're here today. Did you know that we have sedation? We have nitrous. We have all this stuff. Now it's not,
I think what you just said, I want to double click on what you just did right there, right? Regardless of what the answer was, Craig, I know for a fact if I had been a fly on the wall watching you do this, regardless of what the patient had said, your next response after that would have been like, well, great. That's great. It was money. It was fear. It was this. It was that. Well, great. I'm so glad you're here. Right.
And what do most of us do? Make them feel bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hopefully not. Hopefully those times are changing.
I hope so.
Right. Okay. The next bucket is the education from the dental capacity. And we get this question a lot from people and dental students. I get a lot of emails saying like, hey, what courses should I take? Post-grad, pre? And I think where I messed up, Greg, and I think I've told you this many a times, but I hated the occlusion and dentures when I was in dental school. I didn't think it was important for some reason. And what I found out quickly early in my career was that it was the most important thing, and everything was based on that. And I know you as kind of you're almost like quasi orthodontist at this point. You've done so many cases that of course you're like, duh, occlusion is everything. But I think instead of the Invisalign cores or the Botox or the lip filler injections I'm going to go do, or, the 5-layer composites, I feel like there's a lack of foundation.
Yeah.
Currently. You know what? And I know it's not sexy. No one's coming in saying, hey, do a bite equilibration for me, doc.
Well, it's because the problem is most education has a significant price tag associated with it. And if you go to the 48-hour course, the 2-day course of how to do the implant for $2,000, or $5,000, you can say on Monday morning, I could place 1 or 2 implants and get my ROI. So what's the ROI on the occlusion? You don't go in on Monday morning and do an occlusion
non-broken porcelain. That would be one.
But the problem is the timeline. So the reason why Ozempic is popular, dieting still works, FYI.
Yeah,
dieting and exercise still work, but the Ozempic is easy. And the top, I look at education CE like a pyramid. The top of the pyramid is the very specific procedure, the posterior root canal, the guided implant. But the bottom of the pyramid, the foundation, is always occlusion. And occlusion relates to everything, your perio, success, everything. I see so many people that are masterful at veneers, but they never did occlusion, and they have 100% overbite when they're done with these cases. You've seen it.
Yeah. And poor, no guidance and things like that. And which is the whole thing I'm going into next time. But, I know cosmetics is the hot button, right? And I kind of glossed over that thinking like, just teach me veneers and I don't want to turn denture. And what I learned in hindsight was that if you know how to set a beautiful denture, tooth shape and face shape and lip exposure, you are already set up. You're 90% of the way there for your cosmetic cases.
And treatment planning is what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Setting the 2 central incisors and everything from there. Same thing.
Well, and not just that, but Craig, how many cases do you see online on Instagram right now? And I look at them and I'm not saying I was God's gift to cosmetic dentistry, but you see these non-congruent veneer shapes or teeth shapes. And the face shape there's a mismatch. There's a dislocation. It doesn't look Correct. Yes, they may be beautiful veneers, but it's not for that person, or they have excessive incisal exposure, things like that. I'm just saying that, like, these are not sexy topics, right? The denture setting course and the occlusal course, continuing educations, are not booked out 10 months in advance or years in advance.
But you know what is? Coice is booked out for a long time.
That's a very good point.
And there's something that the Coice has that people are readily understanding that's a good ROI.
There you go. You know what? There you go. That's a very good point. All right, moving on. And this could have been in a non-dental bucket, but leadership, I think, deserves its own bucket, because as we've learned in doing masterminds and summits and coachings and for dentists, is that dental school obviously does not prepare you for the ability that you're going to have to lead a team victoriously through hard days, through good days, through drama days, through all these things. And we are not prepared for that. I think that's what causes a lot of dissatisfaction in dentists' lives, is the non-dental stuff, right? Sure. We hear this all the time. I just want to do the dentistry. I just want to do the dentistry. I didn't want to do payroll. I didn't want to do drama. I didn't want to do, conflict resolution with my team. I didn't want to have to market. I didn't want to do all this shit. But at the end of the day, like, I think learning about what strong leaders do or how they would react, like a John Maxwell, right? I think you're a big fan of John Maxwell, and those are short reads. But just studying that in continuum is just so important.
Well, listen, business is leverage. And if you're going to be a solo practitioner, you just have to deal with your support team, and you have the gun. You hire and fire people, so they're going to do what you say, or you're fire them. But if you really want to have a true dental business where you're not the sole producer in the office, you have to influence people, because you need to create value from other people's work. And that's called leadership. Isn't that the 5 levels of leadership? Isn't that John Maxwell's thing you're talking about, basically? Yeah, like the lowest level of leadership is positional leadership. But most dentists and solo practices are just positional, meaning I hired you, I have a gun, I can fire you, you better show up and do your work. Do what I say. Yeah, the next level is relationship. They follow you because they like you, then results, and so on and so forth. But that's, if you want to grow a dental business, and chances are, if you're listening to this podcast, you're entrepreneurial, you're going to have to become a better leader, meaning you're going to have to influence what you want to get done through other people, and then they can do what you need them to do to create organizational value for you. I mean, that's essentially what it is. At the most basic level, you're trading time for money. And then the next level, you're trading, influence for money through the work of other people. It's what it is. We're getting into Marxist shit right now, by the way. Marxism. Well, no, but I think, look, it's just good. I just think it's something that people continually study. I continue to look at this because I feel like it's somewhat of a weakness, right? I think you've got a great leadership style. I have a different leadership style, but I think it's great to just stay learning so that you're self-aware. Oh yeah, I'm a much better leader, Peter, today because of you. Those early lessons that you taught me, we obviously taught each other, but there was a lot of, like, dude, the tail just wagged the dog all the time back in the day. Yeah. And you were just like, and if, if anything, you can't have that. You can't just be benevolent. You have to have some consequence to your leadership. That's why, honestly, just a sidebar, like, Dennis, this is why, like, it's so important. Get in your local study club or something that you have a community. Local study club sucks typically, though, bro. All right. Well, I'm trying not to promote a mastermind. No, but I'm saying, like, no, but no, you don't have to do the mastermind, but like a YPO. But if there's a dental YPO, is there a dental YPO? Yeah, Bulletproof. No, I'm just saying, because the local study club, people don't want to really, dentists at the end of the day they're weird. They don't want to see you win. Right. Yeah. Locally. It's hard. Yeah. Okay. Last thing is what you wanted to add something to this, but I feel like there's this advice given out there is like, find your, reinforce your weaknesses and all those things. And I just, I've been given this advice so much. It's like, become well balanced and well rounded and focus on this and focus on that in your life. And what I wish someone had told me, I wish I told myself, is like, dude, you're not going to be good at that because you hate doing that shit. Here are identify your superpowers, spend some time with yourself, journal, write,
get in group, get in therapy, whatever it is. Find your superpower. Find things that pull you instead of push you, and amplify those and stay in that lane, and then insulate. Find people to insulate for your weaknesses, but do not try to be the Swiss Army knife. And I think, Craig, I wasted so many. Wasted is probably a little draconian, but I felt I had this imposter syndrome for so many years because I felt like I'm not all things to all people, all of the things. And like, I wish I just told myself, like, dude, these 3 things are your superpower. Just do that, because you can do them better than 99% of the world, kind of thing. Just do that, and hire and surround yourself by people who can insulate. Full stop.
Or backfill. Yeah. I mean, I hate to be an original, but that's my, when you initially started the podcast, you said, what advice would you give? That's it as well for me. I figured like I had really strong areas and areas that I was deficient in. And I focused and spent an inordinate amount of time, maybe decades, trying to marginally improve my weaknesses versus staying in my zone of genius. And it's, every person has it's like syndromic. Like if you can run fast and your vision, if you can move quickly and you see big picture, you're typically going to be the type of person that loses the minutia and the details. So you don't feel bad about what you're not great at. The teamwork is about finding people who have different talents and experience and understanding than you do, and forming good long-term relationships with those people and leveraging each other's strengths. What our human brain wants us to do is find people who are exactly like us because it makes us feel good. But if you hire your twin, you'll go nowhere. You have to find your counterpart, the puzzle piece that makes it work. But it's hard. That makes it harder. But that's the one thing I would recommend other people too, is don't feel bad about that. Don't feel bad about your weaknesses. Just hire for them.
Yeah. But I think the narrative is like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur or a practice owner. I have to have all the answers. I have to be all the things, a Swiss Army knife. And it's just bad advice, in my opinion. So, like I said, I wasted time trying to strengthen my weaknesses. And I wish I just said, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Okay, bud, that's a wrap. That's the pod.
Thanks, buddy.
We are, and this may be news to you, but I am signing the contract in the next couple hours for Summit 2025.
What's the date?
August 7th and 8th.
Wonderful.
8th and 9th. Sorry, August 8th and 9th, 2025 at the Ritz-Carlton in Orlando.
Nice.
The room nights, can you get this? Ready? What do you think I negotiated the room night to be?
$340.
$215.
Nice. So the same as the Super 8, basically.
And they've got that awesome water park. So we were hoping that, basically at the end of the summer, you can bring, maybe it could be even bring your family right off your vacation kind of thing.
Yeah, of course. Send your family to Disney and bring your team to the summit.
Yeah.
And by the way, there's enough time that you could gamify it. You could say, if we hit such and such a goal, we're bringing the whole team. So put a stretch goal in. If most of your profit is around 15 to 25%, and you're going to spend X dollars on the summit, just stretch and say, hey, if in 1 year from August to, or from September to August of this year, if we get to this, we'll all go to the Bulletproof Summit, the Ritz-Carlton.
You know what? Now, you and I did talk about this actually in a previous pod, but because I was bringing up the Ritz-Carlton and thing, and so you said, wouldn't it be cool? Or maybe this was a conversation you and I had. I get confused as to offline versus online conversations now. But you had said, wouldn't it be cool if we could get the Ritz to come talk to our teams about excellent customer service, ladies and gentlemen, right? And so we have traction on that. So hopefully we'll have either a keynote or someone from the Ritz-Carlton doing a workshop or something to talk about it. We want our teams to have this amazing customer service and this amazing patient experience when some of them may have not ever experienced that in their outside world. And so what a great opportunity to combine bulletproof learning and customer service.
I love it.
Through the Ritz. And so that's why I really pushed hard on that.
It's such a powerful experience for your team to be exposed to Ritz-Carlton service that, I would even recommend. I mean, it would be financially prohibitive, but it would be a cool experiment to take your team for an overnight stay and do your team retreat at a Ritz-Carlton. But if you can have it subsidized because we're buying, I've done it. But if you could have it subsidized through Bulletproof, where you could negotiate instead of $800 a night, you could do it for $215. what a great way to pack a two-part punch where you're learning, understanding customer service, getting lectured about it, experiencing it. It's very cool.
It's very cool. That's great. All right, everybody. That's the pod. We'll see you later.
Thanks, Pete.
Thank you, buddy.